Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have Bill, who is also referred to as HOF Basketball Autos on Instagram. He is an avid basketball autograph collector, as you can imagine. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all,
Thanks, Kurt. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
absolutely. And so, do you mind just kind of giving a brief introduction of yourself, what got you into collecting, and what it is that interests you the most in terms of your collection?
Yeah, I was giving some thought to exactly how I did get into collecting, and it was in elementary school, 1971, 72, and I remember going to the store and buying packs of basketball and later baseball as well. And looking for the Julius Irving card, not knowing that he was going to ever become valuable, but just because I had read so much about him. I got most of my information from basketball and the ABA, from magazines and from reading the backs of cards. So Julius was somebody that I was intrigued by, wanted him, and then I lived in Los Angeles, so I was looking for Laker cards, and so that was the beginning. And then years later, I stumbled across a card store that had those same cards, and that just piqued the interest in the late '80s, early '90s, and started the whole collecting process all over again for me.
Wow. So yeah, so you're talking about like the 1972 Topps cards and Topps basketball with the Julie Serving rookie and all the other like ABA rookies and other NBA rookies in that set.
Yeah, it was funny because I didn't hear. I have one like this. This was the year. See if I can get it without the glare. And I couldn't necessarily figure out, why they had the jerseys on backwards. Of course, later came to understand that Topps hadn't signed their agreement, their licensing agreement yet, but they did have the photo shoot scheduled, so they had to have the jerseys worn backwards in case they couldn't produce the cards. But yeah, that was the first year. I remember there was a 7-Eleven that they were a dime a piece. The packs were, and I went there once, and there was a guy at the counter, and he was only charging a nickel a piece. So I went home and got all the money that I could, and went back and bought as many packs as I could at a nickel a piece. But yeah, those that was the
Wow.
year that started it off, and then of course the baseball sets, with the black borders. I mean, the whole card is black, and they're so condition sensitive. That was another fun set. Great photography in that baseball set, 71.
Yeah. So you say you got back into it when you started seeing them again around the 90s or so, and
Yeah,
like what did you think when you saw those cards again for the first time after so many years?
I walked into a card shop. I was on a road trip, and I was in Oceanside, California, and there was a card shop there, and I was on assignment there for a few days, and I saw a Nate Archibald rookie card, and I don't even remember the price, but all my favorite players, Nate was my favorite because he was left-handed, and I had read about him, didn't see him play much because they weren't on TV that much. But it was, Nate the Skate or Tiny, as he signs, so often. And I liked all those guys. I liked Connie Hawkins, Hawk. I liked Dr. J. I liked Earl the Pearl. Iceman Gervin. All the guys that I liked had nicknames. So I decided to try to get autograph cards of each of those guys. When I saw that Tiny in Oceanside, I'm pretty sure I bought that card. And then it was, the gradual evolution of, wanting a better condition card or a better autograph. I had the Tiny card, and here I'll show it before I explain it. So I knew that Tiny from reading about him was a counselor at a public school in New York. So I actually called the school and asked for the counseling office and got him on the phone. And nervous, man. I didn't know what to say. I mean, I'm speaking to my hero. I was mid 20s, but it still, scared the hell out of me. But he was the nicest guy. And we spoke for a while, and I said, if I send you a card, would you sign it? And so he did. That's the card. That was the first signed card that I got, and then that just started it from there. It got bigger and bigger, and I sent a rookie card to the San Antonio Spurs, and that one never came back. I contacted Dr. J's offices in back east, and he said he would sign. I sent a very nice rookie. At the time, I didn't know any better. And he signed. It was a beautiful signature too, but it was in a gold pen, which I'm sure he thought would, match well with the card, and it was a favor, or good intentions. But unless you held the card at a certain angle, you couldn't see the autograph, and so it was so frustrating because it was a beautiful card, beautiful autograph, but it wasn't exactly what I, was hoping for. But as card companies started to come out with autograph sets and of different players, and there was a top star set that came out about the same time as the 50 greatest players were announced. So there were a lot of cards, that came out. I mean, well, not a lot. There were a few cards that came out. I think there were 10 cards, and among those cards were like several of my favorite. There was a Tiny Archibald, there was a George Gervin, there was, Sam Jones and the Mikan and a few other people. And that got me very excited about the idea of, hey, I'm going to collect, a lot of, Hall of Fame autographs. And additional sets came out. Sorry to keep showing cards, but I love showing off cards. Dino is never played in the NBA. He was drafted by the Hawks in 1970, considered the greatest Italian player ever. Went into the Hall in 2003, but when this card came out, it came out of a set. I think there were only 5, and another one was Earl Lloyd, who was one of the first African American players to play. And so, that was exciting, and that just, whetted my appetite for collecting Hall of Fame autographs.
Yeah, fueled the fire. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because it sounds like you were starting to collect autographs before it was like a really popular thing, and certainly before it started becoming a thing that was, that the basketball, the actual card companies started doing on a regular basis in their packs and whatnot. So when top stars came out, that was pretty unique because you didn't really find pack pulled autographs of a lot of those legendary Hall of Famers prior to that set. The only ones you really found in pack pulled products were like unlicensed sets or things that got people's autographs when they were in college or before they really became players. You didn't really find pack pulled legendary Hall of Famer autographs until that came out. And yeah, you have one of the other ones, the action pack cards, right?
Those you didn't know if they were legit or not because there was really nothing on the card that would tell you if it was an autograph version. So if somebody had the regular version, it was difficult to tell the difference. But it was great to find these guys with their autographs. Yeah. No, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, just lots
an example. Yeah.
No, you're fine. Yeah, just lots of interesting autographs in those sets of players that you never found before, like like George Mikan and Paul Arizin and a bunch of those guys from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I mean, that was really interesting time of when companies started doing that, and now it's almost all the sets or most of the sets that are being produced now by Panini and whatnot have like a Hall of Fame insert set or something along those lines. It feels like you're finding more and more Hall of Fame autographs on the market now, obviously, but I still find those really early sets really interesting, and I still find, of course, things that people got signed back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and whatnot through the mail or just in person, however they could possibly get those signed. I find those things incredibly interesting, and a lot of it is still pretty rare and pretty hard to find.
Yeah, and I, some of the older guys, their signatures are really, really great, and they're consistently great. As an example, I'll keep throwing up more cards until you tell me to stop. This stock,
keep it up. I enjoy it. Yeah.
So this came out of 92, 93 hoops. and there were two autograph issues in there. There was a Pat Ewing, which was hard to read because it was on a black card, and the black signature just didn't play well. And the
Mm-hmm.
Stockton. And allegedly, they were, I think the pack said there was one in every 14,400 packs. So, the odds of getting those. But to your point is those cards I thought would be tremendously valued down the road, but they aren't because there are so many of the guys that, the Hall of Famers sign so much, nowadays. There's a handful of guys that I think I would ever see. Patrick Ewing was one of them. Stockton was a tough signature. Dave Bing was a tough signature. Some of those, there were a handful of the 50 greatest that I didn't know if I would ever see. But now, like you said, there's so many issues and so many sets, and the guys keep their signatures up. Their signatures look good. Well, I was just gonna because I did start to notice the difference of the signatures between say the mid or early '90s to the mid '90s that they started to change. I did start to pursue autographs of early cards because I just thought that they just the autographs are nicer and they were full signature.
Yeah.
And Kevin Garnett's on these issues were, I don't know if there's too much reflection there. But they just, the guys had, they took more care with their signatures. Of course, Garnett, like Kobe, was one of those guys who, came out of high school. So that was one of Kobe's first signatures. And because it was a full autograph, his full name, I was so excited to have a couple of issues of this. And then because Kobe only signed Kobe for the longest period after that, but then that changed.
Right.
He did start signing his full name again, which is great. It's great for the hobby, and sadly, what it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you definitely notice that with a lot of players, and I get it. Once you start signing tens of thousands of cards and 8x10s and all sorts of things, it's just I'm sure the burden of of signing everything in perfect full script, gets on a lot of those players. And you see so many like Shaquille O'Neal is a prime example. He had a full name signature once upon a time back in the mid '90s, and now, not so much anymore.
Yeah.
And nowadays, the ultra modern guys, none of them even attempt a full name. They're all just basically signing abbreviations or whatever, or barely a letter nowadays. It feels like so. Yeah, it is incredible. Like people don't know, they should just go and just Google search autograph images of guys from back in the day, and just the thing, the signatures like John Havlicek's signatures and Oscar Robertson and all those guys, all those greats from the day. They are all really consistent, full name, really nicely done for the most part. I mean, I feel like it actually adds something to a lot of these cards nowadays. It just looks like, like an old school Topps baseball set of having their full well done signature on the card.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny that it seems like a lot of the Celtics are some of the best signers over the years. The Sam Jones, even when Bill Russell finally decided to start signing. But all those guys have great signatures. Bob Cousy's signature is fabulous. It's beautiful signature. One signature that was consistent was this guy, and it's got flair to it. I'm not mad at Steph Curry's signature at all because it is a good looking card. The Cousy, at some point down the road, I discovered that it was cheaper not only to go back and get early issues of players because people didn't so much care about the early issues, but the oddball issues. And this is a Burke Ross Cousy. And that predates his 1957 Topps rookie. It's not as desirable, but it didn't cost me near as much 10 years ago as it would have. So I'm happy to pay something like that up. That started me looking at oddball cards, and I'm going to go off on just a 3-card tangent real quick. I got lucky because I got a few cards, Drazen Petrovic, that I've been looking for over 20 years, and it appeared online one day on eBay, and I couldn't believe it. So that was, I believe that's his rookie card, and it is for those that don't know, he passed away in a car accident in 1993 after only a few years in the NBA. And then Oscar Schmidt from Brazil, who has scored more points than anybody if you count all the basketball. I think he's the leading scorer in Olympic history as well. So I was happy to find this guy as well. Yeah,
Yeah, I was looking through your Instagram earlier, and I was hoping you were going to show the Petrovic and Schmidt. If not, I was going to ask about them. Yeah, because I thought those two really stood out to me when I was looking at your collection. It's like, oh wow, I don't see those two autographs very often.
Yeah, I was. They both came in about the same time, and both of them. I don't know where they were hiding, but another Oscar Schmidt showed up at about the same time. So somewhere along the lines, I don't do deep dives into where the folks get cards necessarily, but there was more than one Schmidt when I picked that one up, and I agree, those two are special to me in my collection. I did just pick up one. It just arrived this week that I never thought I would see. That an Earl Lloyd autographed rookie, and I guess he did a signing for somebody of 3 or 4 cards. I didn't think I'd ever see this, but very happy to have it, and look forward to having it slabbed as well.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, anytime I see an Earl Lloyd autograph, yeah, it's like wow, it's always great to see that, and because yeah, like you said, first African American player to actually play in an NBA game,
Right.
and his autographs seem to be very scarce for a while, but yeah, but yeah, they do pop up from time to time, but it's not still too often, and it's nice when people like yourself can add him into your collection.
Yeah, I'm kind of downsizing now because a couple of autographs have come up online that are just so outrageously priced for my money. They're not outrageously priced for what people are willing to pay, but for what I can pay. But I never thought I would see who was the not Gus Johnson. I have a cut of Gus Johnson. Guy Rogers, a Guy Rogers autograph, 2 of them that I think one of
Oh
your
yeah.
former guests had, and beautiful cards. Never thought I'd see those, and then yeah, Guy Rogers, and there was a second Hall of Fame. Carl Braun. He had a
Carl
dual
Braun.
autograph that was sitting online for forever, but then he went back and signed some reprints, and so more power to those folks that can continue to collect and go after those. But yeah,
Yeah, I do think over the recent years there have been a lot more attention drawn to the Hall of Fame autos, especially the Hall of Famers that are really difficult to find, like the Guy Rogers and the Carl Bronze, and you got your obvious ones like your Wilts and your Pete Maravich and things like that. But I think more attention and more value has been placed on a lot of those really scarce guys that we mentioned.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Although I love Wilt Chamberlain's, his auto on cards. I just recently, well, I'm in the middle of working a deal for selling my Epic auto of Wilt. As you know, in 1999, he passed that year, and there were the 2 issues that came out, Incredibles and Epic. A funny story, I went to a card show, and I had, back in late 90s, you could only take out $300 out of an ATM within a 24-hour period. So I took out $300 and went to Hollywood Park in Inglewood for a card show. Bought a ticket, bought something to eat, went upstairs, saw the Wilt Incredibles, and the guy wanted 300, which was the Beckett book value at the time, and all I had was 280 left after eating and buying the ticket. So he wouldn't cut me a deal, wouldn't cut me any slack, and I missed out on that one. But
Oh,
that was a little frustrating.
oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could have gotten that for $300 back then, oh
Oh,
my
I
goodness.
I would have kept it too.
But that's okay. We've all gone through those. Anyone who's been doing this long enough, we've all missed out on those deals. And 5, 10 years down the road, it's just like, okay, so now that card is worth 10 times or whatever it was back then. But it happens. If you've been doing this long enough, it's going to happen to you.
Yeah, yeah. I had
It's okay.
a black refractor of LeBron James I sold just before the pandemic hit, numbered to 500 of PSA 9. And I sold it to purchase some other Hall of Fame autos that I wanted. And of course, that card is like so, skyrocketed. But like you said, you live and learn and you let it go, right? One thing I
Yeah.
did have fun going back and looking at was I went back to make a set of these guys. I always love these cards. They were
Mhm.
the 92, 93, the first year that Topps did refractors. And I remember when those cards came out and being in a card store and the shop owner was showing me the difference between the refractor version and the regular, and I couldn't see it. So I couldn't see paying for the difference if I couldn't see it with the naked eye. And there's no designation on the card. But yeah,
Right.
nostalgia gets us all. So I did go back and went after the whole refractor set of that, and that was a fun chase.
Nice. So, do you have like a goal in mind for your collection? Are you trying to complete something with your Hall of Fame autos, or just trying to grab as many as possible?
I think at one time, up until when everything took off a couple of years ago, I was trying
Mhm.
to get a cut or an authenticated autograph of every Hall of Fame player, not, a coach or a contributor, but just players. And like I said, I felt pretty good about that until just recently when a couple of them, came up and they're just so far out of my price range that that's when I decided to downsize and go after some cards that I'm interested in. Yeah, everything evolves and definitely evolving away from that initial goal. But it was fun. It was a great pursuit, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us has had to sort of adjust our expectations post COVID. COVID did changed a lot of things in terms of collecting and what is feasible and accessible to a lot of us that are just trying to do it without like infinite amounts of means to go out and get whatever whatever we want. So yeah, I mean, I have grandiose ideas of things that I want to still add to my collection one day, but a lot of those are like
Mhm.
five figures, if not even higher at this point. It's just like I don't know if I'm going to ever get that.
Right.
So yeah, you have to sometimes adjust your expectations, or maybe just sort of look toward completing other things or going a tier. If you're trying to collect all mint nines of 1961 Fleer, maybe you have to go and get all sixes or fives or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I get a lot of pleasure out of just finding cards that I like that have an emotional appeal. I've even gone back into some of the other sports, baseball and football, and back to some of the Pete Rose and Hank Aaron and lower grade vintage cards. Also lower grade football cards. I live in the L.A. area and Crazy Lakes Hirsch and Bob Waterfield and Norm Von Brocklin. Some of their 1950 issues, their rookie cards are not that expensive, and cards are beautiful. They have great designs, and the history of football is oddly forgotten in my book, unlike basketball.
Yeah, and you don't need, especially when it comes to a lot of the vintage stuff. I mean, I don't know, like eye appeal really is everything when it comes to vintage. Like
Mm-hmm.
if it's well centered and it still has most of the colors that it's meant to have from back in the day, I could care less personally if it's like no sharp corners and even has a couple of lines in it or things like that. If it doesn't have to be a seven or an eight for me to be really interested in it.
No, I'm the same way, and amazingly, from just going down a rabbit hole recently, I mean, some of the older issues, autograph issues, even from like I just bought a Pete Rose 19, I think it was a 64 autograph. It was slabbed by SGC, but it was the card has rounded corners. It looks like a card from 1964, but it's a beautiful card, and like you said, it has great eye appeal. The color's all there, and then it's autographed by Pete Rose for $100. I don't know how that could, you could go wrong in that regard. Yeah.
I don't think so either. No, definitely not. Okay, so what over the years are you sort of most proud of collecting, or perhaps even completing? If you've completed anything that you've had a goal to complete.
Uh, that's a tough one. I think about all the things that I let get away. I had star cards at one point, and then I thought, you know what, star cards just aren't going anywhere. Of course, I made that decision right before the pandemic too. um, I don't know. I wouldn't say I take pride in the cards. I like them, And if I just used this line with the guy recently that I was telling that I was selling my Wilt Epic. I had two of them. I had two Wilt Epic autographs from 1999. I had a gold version, which I sold for reasons several years ago, and then I had this other one. But I felt like that card, as much as I know it's desirable, I felt like that card owned me. When I looked at it, I didn't get the same pleasure that I get from, say, looking at, a signed, Jerry West that brings back childhood memories. And I,
Yeah.
so I don't want cards to own me. I don't want to look at them and think and not have a good feeling about them. So I guess, the thing I'm most proud of is that the cards that I have, I like, and like the Oscar Schmidt and the Drazen Petrovic and the Earl Lloyd. I mean, those are maybe some players that people wouldn't know or even care about, but to me, they're special just because people don't know about them necessarily, and they make me feel good.
Yeah,
As
absolutely.
even Tony Kukoc makes me feel good. It's in silver.
No,
So,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's
I mean, I'm personally kind of jealous you have an Oscar Schmidt auto. That is pretty cool. And you do have you do have some higher end stuff. I noticed that what you probably picked up, years ago, or whatever. I did notice, you have a Pistol Pete auto, correct, and things of that nature.
yeah. I guess, and I don't want to, I love the hobby, but I
Hmm.
traded a Sam Jones signed card for a Pistol Pete signed autograph. Had a PSA sticker on it, certification. It was on their website and everything. And I sent it in to have it slabbed, and they wouldn't slab it. They said they couldn't authenticate it. So I
Um,
don't. The politics of all that is counterintuitive and doesn't much matter anymore. But yeah, I that was so disappointing to me that I was obsessed with having a Pistol Pete, and I went out and got the beautiful. I think it's it's the vibrant colored card, like the 71 Pistol Pete autograph. Not the tall boy, but the year after that. That has so yeah,
yes, yeah. This either
yeah.
second or yeah.
I couldn't have a Hall of
Okay,
Fame
yeah.
autograph collection without Pistol Pete. He's another one of those nickname guys, Hawk, Dr. J, Tiny, Ice, Pistol. There were like seven of them I initially kicked this whole thing off and really got me started on it. So yeah, I know that to answer your question, the long answer, yeah, the Pistol Pete is one of my feel good cards for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, you're right. They really had some amazing nicknames back then, and it
Yeah.
is fun to see those if they do inscribe them with their old school nicknames. I do definitely enjoy those. I'm not always a person that really believes in paying a premium for inscriptions, but there are a few inscriptions. Like if I see a George Gervin that he puts Iceman on, it's just like, okay, that is kind of cool. I think I might pay a bit of a premium for that.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I actually there's I guess a lot of guys do signings and you can find those a lot of cards from players that played in the 70s mainly, and they will have
Hmm.
written everything down on the card, their rookie card of what they've done. I'm not a big fan of that either. I think I'd rather have a simple inscription, maybe a nickname and an inscription, but all those stats just seems to me to clutter up the beauty of the card. That's IMHO, my humble opinion.
No, yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't care. I mean, I get it that it's a proud thing to be a member of the Hall of Fame. It's a proud thing to be 10-time All Star and however many first teams or whatever they may. But yeah, I don't need to see all that on the front of the card. It's just like no, that's a little too much. I still want to see the beauty of the card itself, so I don't need like 8 inscriptions to clutter up everything. Maybe one, maybe two at the most. If it's
Yeah.
and it's got to be something a little bit more meaningful, like their nickname that everyone knows them by, or I don't know, like me personally, I like if you're like in the top 50 NBA anniversary team, that
Yeah.
to me is a lot cooler to see that on an old car as opposed to just Hall of Famer. Because to be perfectly frank,
Mm,
they've put in a lot of people in the Basketball Hall of Fame that
mm, mm.
maybe didn't exactly they weren't exactly like amazing players during their time period. A lot of people kind of gotten in over the years just because you know uh,
Longevity or
they're a well known name, yeah, longevity, things of that nature. It's a lot different than the Baseball Hall of Fame where you it's what is it, like a 70% or 80% vote in the Baseball Hall of Fame still or something like that to
mm,
get in.
mm.
Yeah, Basketball Hall of Fame, not so much. So it's honestly not that big of a deal to me necessarily, but yeah, if you're like top 50 anniversary team or something like that, then that's actually, yeah, that's something to me that I enjoy seeing on an inscription.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I think basketball is all
Uh,
done in secret. The voting, I believe, isn't it? Baseball's writers vote for the Hall of Fame. Um, I don't know if
yeah,
basketball is such an
that
open
sounds
process.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, you might be right about that. And yeah, I don't. Yeah, so I don't even know exactly what it takes to get into the basketball Hall of Fame. It just seems like that.
yeah,
It's not as strict of a guideline as it is the Baseball Hall of Fame for sure.
yeah. I was just looking through my collection at what I wanted to pull out to for your show, and I have a oh god, now I'm going to draw a blank. It was a guy who played University of Kansas under Foog Powell. I mean Allen Foog Phog back in the 20s. And he wasn't inducted until like 1973. So he played in the 20s. There was
Wow.
no NBA to play in, but he went in and not until 1973. But it's fine, I
Wow.
mean,
Yeah.
recognize your history and your past, and I'm not against that.
Yeah. Well, no, of course not, and that's the thing. The thing that I find interesting about still like uh, going for like Hall of Fame autos and things like that is like, well, you're still covering like pretty much the history of the entire NBA when you're doing a project like that, and that is something that
Hmm.
I definitely do find very interesting. Because yeah, I mean, like we're talking about with Oscar Schmidt, a lot of people don't know the name Oscar Schmidt, but I really encourage you to kind of go do some research on him. There's several documentaries about him, and you'll really learn a lot about of the interesting time of when the international leagues were starting to see if they could, uh, when the NBA was starting to see if they can draw in some of the international players into the NBA league,
Hmm.
and how that sort of all kind of played out during the 80s. And there's a lot of interesting things about country relations during that time period as well, of course. So doing deep dives on things like that, all because you see like this Oscar Schmidt card that exists, and you're just like, well, who is Oscar Schmidt exactly, and why is he such an important player and a Hall of Famer? And I think it's important to go back and learn that history, and having these type of collections is a really great way of doing that.
It's funny because I would never have known this if I didn't collect, but in your research, and so I looked at Wikipedia to see what Oscar Schmidt what he had done. Kobe Bryant was influenced by Oscar Schmidt because he was living overseas when his dad was playing overseas,
Mhm.
and so he saw Oscar Schmidt play, and had some influence on Kobe's from watching Oscar Schmidt play, and the differences in the game, like you said, in the '80s. I mean, when Drazen Petrovic came to when he was drafted, he went to Portland, and they really didn't know how to use him, and he almost quit, and then he was traded to the Nets, had 2 great years with the Nets, and then, of course, had the June of 1993 car accident. But he was, even at that time, he was thinking about not playing because I think the 13 players who led the league in scoring at the All-Star break, he was one of those players, and he was the only one who didn't make the All-Star team. So he was frustrated with the lack of recognition, even though if you watch documentaries on YouTube about him, he gave Jordan a handful, and Jordan acknowledges that Drazen was came to play and never backed down every game. So yeah, 100% agree. You learn the history of the game from collecting and getting to know the players better.
Yeah, that's what I love about what I'm doing right now with collecting 61 Fleer stats autograph is just kind of it really kind of makes you kind of do deep dives on these players that you're trying to collect because especially when you're trying to find certain autographs and of players who are very hard to find, you're just kind of like, well, why is it so difficult to find some of these autographs? And you go, you start learning about sort of not just their careers, but just sort of the personal life stories of a
Yeah,
lot of those old school players, like Jack Twyman and Walter Dukes and Walt Bellamy and just all these players back then. And yeah, it can really take you down a rabbit hole, but a fascinating rabbit hole. And yeah, like that's one of the things that really hooked me into collecting a vintage set like that, and just yeah, really kind of the things you can learn from trying to figure out more about these players is really interesting.
one of the guys I found really interesting was Hank Lucetti. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. I don't think he was in the '61 set. I think his rookie was in the '57. But he was,
Yeah,
allegedly the guy who, if he didn't invent the jump shot, he was one of the guys who helped to popularize, the jump shot, at least jumping off of 2 feet and shooting. And if you, if I've found books by these guys, a lot. Kenny Sailors has a book. Hank Lucetti has a book. There, a lot of these guys have, information out there, short videos on YouTube or that are really fascinating to learn about.
yeah, yeah, and I just think it's important understanding their importance of how they helped develop the NBA into what it is today.
Hmm.
And like all those guys played a role. All the Earl Lloyds and the Paul Arizons and the Bob Cousy's and Bill Russells, obviously, and just and just what the NBA wouldn't be what it is right now without those guys that started it all. And that's why I just love it. And I've always been a basketball nerd myself and an NBA junkie. So I guess that's why I'm really interested in it. And when I come across people like you who have been collecting these things for a long time and have all these really interesting autographs and cards and even the oddball stuff that I find interesting as well. Yeah, I just can't help but just be extremely fascinated by it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate your love for the sport and what you do. It's fun. I just went on Instagram within the last year or so and discovering so many collectors and then so many stealthy collectors too. There's guys out there that have huge collections, but they have an Instagram page but no post. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. I talked to a few people that still aren't completely ready to come forward with the things that they've collected over the years, but yeah, they're like, I like the idea of the fact that more people are public about what they're collecting, what they're interested in, and all these platforms that you have now to interact with people and other collectors. And they love interacting, but they're also very guarded at the same time about some of the things that they do have.
Yeah, I contacted a guy recently about one card, an innocuous card, a Bernard King rookie. I mean, there's plenty of them out there, but he had a signed Bernard at a good price. And within an hour, we went down a rabbit hole, and he just has like every card I would ever want, in multiples. But it was pretty funny. Yeah, so you never know.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you got on Instagram and have been able to share your collection. Was there anything else that you wanted to share with us today? Anything that you wanted to showcase or highlights for us?
No, I just, I hate to say it, but I really only, at this point, my collection is changing in the sense that I'm only doing slab cards. Because I recently, I traded for this card a while back and discovered that it's a fairly well-known forgery, fake, and it was done so well. But I found out the hard way after trading it for something that was quite valuable. So I just, beware, out there, beware of forgeries, and that's the only thing, that I would share. It's still a fun hobby, but you do have to protect
Yeah,
yourself. Yeah.
you do. Yeah, when I first started going down the path of collecting old school autos, yeah, it's just like, okay, I'm not going to get anything for a while unless it has been authenticated already by by the big companies, by PSA or BGS or SGC, or if it has like a JSA sticker or something like that, obviously, then that would be fine as well. But yeah, it's good to protect yourself and sort of stay on the cautious side for a while until you've been doing it and you're more comfortable with, like, okay, I know now what the 69 tops cards are supposed to look like. I know what the autographs are supposed to look like by those players. I feel pretty confident when I come across one, even if it's raw,
Right.
that it's legit and whatnot. But yeah, definitely just be cautious and just play safe for a while if you need to, and do a lot of research for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And then enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, have fun. Yeah. Whatever you do, definitely have fun, and that's definitely the most important thing, no matter what, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your collection and telling us some great stories of of your collecting journey and how it's brought you here. Yeah, I appreciate the time you've taken. Is there anything else you want to make sure to plug or mention? Anything that you're really interested now that you're looking for, that you're uh, uh, trying to obtain a certain set or anything at this point in time?
No, I guess I'm in a happy place. There's nothing that's really stands out. Well, yeah, there is one. A Deacon Jones
Okay.
rookie card. Yeah, he was one of my heroes growing up. I read his autobiography, and I dropped off a card for him to sign at a show. He was late. I left it with the dealer, and I got two minor league baseball autographs instead of the Deacon Jones card. 20 years ago. I'm not quite over it just yet, but yeah, that's what I'm looking for now. That's one of my. I wouldn't call it a grail, but it's something to pursue because there are not that many out there, and I still think he's one of the greatest
Okay.
defense players ever. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, if you know of anything or have a lead, definitely reach out to Bill. Once again, his Instagram is HOF Basketball Autos, or Hall of Fame Basketball Autos, if you will, on Instagram. And yeah, once again, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Kurt. I appreciate it. Thank you.